Okay, so this is going to be a quick video on disassembly of a WCI chassis air conditioner. This applies to the models made from about 1993, I believe. I think 92 was half this design, half the older design. I believe 1993 was the first year of this version of this chassis, which they ran up until about 2003. This is the older style. It's shorter. The newer ones are a little deeper, but it's the same process. These were made better. This one does work fine, but it has some severe rust. But the actual coil itself, it appears to be fine. It's filthy. Had mud dauber nests in it. Luckily, they're all gone. So I'm going to be cleaning this up really well, drilling a hole in it so it can't pool up with water anymore. And then I'll show a couple things you can do on these units to help if the coil is rotted, like at the bottom here. Sometimes they're rotted all the way through and the coil's loose. In that case, you can put a screw there and then over here into the plastic shroud, which is connected to the bulkhead. Now, this is one of the worst ones I've seen in a while, but these are pretty simple to disassemble. So basically all you're going to have to do to completely disassemble it is remove this clip here. You might need a screwdriver or something, or a pair of pliers to pop it, but that just comes off. And obviously you have to have the unit apart to this point. And then you're going to remove the 2 screws, or in this case 1 screw for the control panel. This should now come out. Sometimes the ground wire is a problem. It'll be too short and you'll have to kind of get in there, but this one appears like it's going to be okay. It's just these wires you have to remove. These little guys, you'll need that again too. Just don't lose those. Okay. So let me undo these wires and then I'll show what to do next. Okay, so I've removed the zip tie. A lot of times these wires will be tied up to the low pressure suction side of the refrigerant system. In this case it has this gooey stuff on it, which is a mess, but I've removed the zip tie, which is actually still good. Can't tell you how many times I've seen a newer unit with the zip ties that are, about to break, but this one's from 1993, and the zip tie was perfectly fine. It put up a fight to actually come out because it was kind of stuck in there, but it was still good. So basically the bulkhead is held on. There are 3 screws. There's one here. There's another one. I'm gonna find it right there. And then there is a third one that comes in through the bottom. You don't have to remove the third one. The third one appears to just be a guide pin, a guide screw or something to guide it in, but it actually doesn't thread into the metal. It just threads into the base pan. I don't recommend you remove that one. Now this unit is pretty rusty and is a high hour unit, and these screws, I have never had a problem with these screws actually being rusted out. So we just remove them. I broke them loose already, but just remove that screw. See, it's not too bad. And all the screws on these appear to be the same. I have never had a problem with them. There was a newer model with a deeper chassis from about 2003 or 2002. They had the bulkhead screws were a little longer. I believe it was the bulkhead screws, but they're the same thread. So with those 2 screws removed, now I have to remove the wiring for the compressor. So I just broke this loose already, but these usually come right off. So we'll get that cap off. Okay, so there is a little nut and a clear plastic washer that goes on top of this. And then here's the compressor wiring, and the overload is right here. Just make a note of where everything goes, obviously. Typically, I just remove all 3 of the connectors over here. These should just be standard spade terminals and they should come right off. But you're going to need to remove these anyway to get a good cleaning. So now take these sticky, gross wires. These are now loose. I'm gonna pull the overload off of there, just so nothing happens to it. Put that aside. There we go. Now these are now loose. These wires go to the run capacitor, which is located back there, which is actually very easy to replace once the bulkhead's removed, and the other ones go to the fan motor. This fan motor, if you have the GE fan motor, which this one does, or the old style GE fan motor, there are oil ports under little rubber caps. So now you got to loosen the foam around here. There is foam to seal the bulkhead where the tubes go through. And yes, I have to straighten this. This is completely flattened when I got it. Straighten it a little better. These are now loose. Just make sure they're not going to wiggle up and get caught on anything. You have to be careful. And then there is some sticky putty. It's like almost like plumber's putty they use to seal the corners of these. And there is foam that has to be put around these units. You can see there's foam here. You have to replace that or you will have an air leak. There's also foam along top of here and along underneath this shroud. All you have to do is just, it might be a little stiff because it hasn't moved in a very long time. But you can see, you get like a flathead screwdriver or something up under these and pop them loose, these little clips. So I'm gonna go get a screwdriver. And same with this side. Let me go get those. Okay, so I just used an old butter knife to pop under there. They will be stiff. This one's the main one. This one is barely, in there. It's a very short clip, but you just pop it and kind of twist it like that. Be careful, obviously, you don't want to stab anything, but pop it loose. Same with this side. And then I typically would now remove this, so I still have to do that. Let me get that off now. Now these wires are disconnected. An important note, typically I do the wires first, but in this case, I wanted to untangle them because they were zip tied to this. But typically I'd remove these wires before I remove anything else. These little zip tie clips they have here, they're removable. Just push that up and then push the zip tie through, and that will undo the wires. So let me do that. Okay, so the tab broke, but I just removed the whole thing from there. Just use a pair of needle nose to push it through. You can buy new, I don't remember what these are exactly called, but they do sell these. There's always a schematic. It's always going to fall off. Everyone I've ever dealt with fell off. I always like to take that and try and clean it off and then put it back in when I'm done. I'll use some double sticky tape or something just to put it back in there. Now these screws are loose. That zip tie is loose. These wires have some slack in them now. I just lifted this up and over. That can stay like that. Next step would be to gently wiggle the evaporator, and you can remove this front air duct. If you have a vent on it, you have to remove the vent little pull, and then you have to unclip it, which is a pain in the ass if I'm going to be honest. They're easy to break too, but then you have to take the vent, which is like it's almost like a Tupperware container. It's a sheet of plastic. It's flexible. You can bend it. They're either clear or black or gray. You can kind of bend it out of this track gently, and then you can remove this. Sometimes they stick a little bit, which this one is. This thing is disgusting. Be careful because the evaporator does like to come out. Some of them have a screw here. Some of them have a screw here. Some of them have both. So just be prepared to kind of wiggle the evaporator. You might need to get something in between there to pop it loose. And then that just comes right out. Now you can see the squirrel cage fan. I'm just going to lay the evaporator core or coil back in. See how nasty it is. Now, just pull up on these. If you have one of these that's newer that has this piece is white plastic, they turn yellow. Those units don't fare as well as these. That piece gets incredibly brittle. Be careful using this to pull up. I would recommend grabbing up under the fan and then the metal piece, but on these older style with the black piece, you just lift this up And in my case, the condenser mount is rotted, so the condenser's trying to come up. So I gotta address that. So be prepared. There is usually foam under here that'll stick to the coil. And then there's the bulkhead, complete with the fan motor, the run cap, the fan shroud, everything. And now, while the mount is severely rotted, the coil's not too bad. It's only got a little bit of rust here, or corrosion. So now I can vacuum all this out, clean it really well, and then I'm going to, this one's bad enough, I'm going to use the new Bright. There's the locating screw. And I'm going to clean this thing up. I'll drill a drain hole. I typically like to drill the drain hole right here. And then I'll put a second one over here. In these units, you got to be careful, because if you drill the drain hole in the wrong spot, it'll be covered by the condenser fan shroud. Oh man, this one's bad, but it works fine. And then this is the GE, the older style GE motor. There is a rubber cap. I don't know if you can see it, barely, but there's a rubber cap on both sides so you can lubricate this motor. This motor spins fine, besides the leaf hitting the fan, but we'll still probably give it a little oil. Wouldn't hurt. This is a pretty severely rotted unit, but it's not beyond repair. This is honestly about what I'd expect for a unit like this. Oddly enough, the coil itself isn't too bad. There you go. And then when you put it back together, it's the reverse of disassembly, obviously. Make sure you replace this. I use about 1/4 inch thick foam, or the foam tube stuff, like weather seal for this. It seals it nicely. And then I use, like, I think it's 1/16 inch to go under here. You can see where it was. And then that just runs from this corner here up here. And there you go. That's pretty much it. Takes me about 15 minutes, give or take, to take one of these apart, and this one fought me a little bit. Thank you for watching.